Welcome to Fear Street.
My name is Brad. The story you're about to hear happened in the summer of 2011. I was out backpacking alone along the trail near Catawba, about 15 miles from Newcastle, Virginia, camping out along the way. Over the course of these lonely nights, on several occasions, I was kept awake by what sounded like footsteps crunching outside, as well as the grumble of a voice talking to itself. I tried to convince myself that it was just my ears playing tricks on me, but on another evening I saw something that disturbed me deeply. I had managed to collect a fair amount of firewood, and by the time night fell, I had a small fire going with a good collection of firewood piled beneath me. Under the reassuring light of the campfire, I started to become more at ease with the deafening silence of nature. I pulled a cigarette from my pocket and enjoyed a casual smoke as I put my feet up. When I tried to ditch the butt in my weakening flame, my throw was off and it landed outside of the ashes. I got up to fix my mistake and to stoke the fire when I turned around to go back to my seat, and I saw him. The light was low with my little fire, but I could clearly see a man reaching down with a scorched hand for my firewood. He wore red plaid with large black burns tearing at his trim, and a red ashy beard that smoldered at his face. He quickly looked up, and his vacant white eyes connected with mine. He gritted his teeth and scrunched his nose towards me before quickly leaving the ring of firelight. I was shocked. I've never experienced a fear like that. I fell right onto my butt next to the flames. I looked out into the forest and saw nothing but dark shadows and unclear objects. A blank wall of nothing, of everything. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even yell, with no one to hear me but him. So I did what every red-blooded American would do. I packed up my things and got the hell out of Dodge. I kept on until dawn, continuing in my rush to get out of there for hours before I grew tired and stopped to rest for a moment. I tried to stay awake, but eventually sleep found me. I woke up 2 to 3 hours later. I could tell because the sun had dropped down considerably and a funny smell filled my nostrils. I wiped my eyes, gathered my wits, and shot off my back, heart pounding to the sound of something troubling. What I saw was my tent, or what remained of it. The only thing left standing was the tent poles. A bubbly layer of melted green plastic lay beneath them, with a steady gray smoke still rising from the mess. I got up and felt the weight of the sky fall on my head. For a moment I was sure I'd woken up into a horrible nightmare. Without contemplating it much further, I grabbed my water bottle and ran through the empty pasture. By the time I made it to the gravel road, I was out of breath and dripping with sweat. I hastily chugged from my water bottle and wiped my mouth. Down the road, I could see a vehicle parked in the dust. I staggered forward with my hands on my sides and soon realized it was a sheriff's sedan. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't have been happier to see a law enforcement vehicle. When I got closer to the vehicle, I noticed that it was parked outside of the remains of a charred house. Nothing left standing but the mailbox out front. On the way into town, I didn't tell the officer about my experience, being afraid that he might think I escaped from the loony bin, and instead I asked him about the burnt down house that he had been parked in front of. The sheriff explained to me that 4 days prior, the same day I started my trip, the house had burnt down. There was no known cause, but there was an indication of arson. 2 daughters, a wife, and her husband were all in the house when the fire started, and unfortunately, none of them made it out. Real tragic stuff, the sheriff said as he retold the story, and I could only shake my head with my bottom jaw hanging low. I was about 10 years old. I was backcountry camping along the Appalachian Trail with my mother and father. We settled down for the night in a clearing, and that's when I began to sense that something was rather off about the whole scene. I looked up at my mother and noticed that she was pale and her hand was tightly grasping mine. She asked my dad, "Todd, can we set up camp somewhere different?" Still clutching my tiny hand. She wasn't liking the vibe the woods were giving off. I sensed it too. I was afraid. My father shook his head. "It's getting late. I'm not searching for firewood in the dark." I remember asking to go home. The small clearing seemed to give an ominous vibe. After hot dogs and marshmallows, we crawled into the 6-person tent that my father had purchased for us. My father fell asleep in a few minutes, but for some reason my mother and I couldn't. "Emma," she asked, "are you asleep?" I lifted my head. "No, Mama. I'm scared. I can't sleep." "Hush. It's fine. We're safe inside the tent," she comforted me. I finally fell asleep and woke up in the early hours of the morning. I came out of the tent and saw my mother sitting on the ground meditating. She meditated every morning with a cup of Earl Grey tea. I came up to her and tapped her on her shoulder. "Mama, can we take a walk?" Mother opened her eyes and got to her feet. "Sure, let's not go too far. I don't want Daddy to worry." We hiked near our campsite when my mother suddenly stopped. I followed her gaze to see a hazy image of a man leaning against a birch tree about 20 feet away. He was just a hazy image, but he didn't seem threatening, just calm and solemn. He lifted his head and looked in our direction. Then I rubbed my eyes and, just like that, he was gone. My mother just looked at me and I understood that the man wasn't threatening, just calm and sad. Since then, I've never seen a ghost, but I'll never forget him. Ever. Back in 1998 or 99, a few friends and I went out on Halloween, riding the old back roads around here. There's a very large mountain range near us, near Nicholsville, Virginia. It's a really small town around there, maybe 300 or so people, no stores, just a stop sign. It's a huge range and some places have never seen a human. We decided to go up to the old fire spotting tower in the middle of the night because we were young, dumb, and full of bravado. We made our way up. It's about a 35-minute drive and a rough hike to get to the top. There was a serious uneasiness in the air, like that feeling before a storm, just surreal. On our way up, we felt like we were being watched. This place is known to have devil worshipping going on. I've seen plenty of evidence. One of the guys up front did have a pistol with him, so we felt safe at that point. About halfway up, we spotted a small dog. No specific breed, just kind of a mutt. He or she had a bandana around its neck, red. We made our way up further and rolled our windows down. We could hear a very faint drumming, almost like a heartbeat. It was strange. I've been up there over a dozen times and I've never heard anything like it. I've seen plenty of carvings and other things, but I've never heard this before. We got to the top and got out to walk the remaining couple hundred yards to the top and made it uneventfully. We did notice the drumming or whatever noise was much more clear there. We smoked probably half a pack each up there over the course of an hour. It started getting very chilly, so we decided to head back down the same way we came. We got back to the car and it was quiet. Really quiet. No noise, no nothing. Silence. We started driving back down. On the drive down, you've got to go slow or you'll drive off the side of the mountain. The driver pointed off to the side and we saw what looked like torches or flashlights. They were a good 500 yards or more into the brush. I've been up and down that mountain many times. There's no road there. We kept going, and we got about a quarter of the way down, and we saw that dog again. It kept getting closer. I swear on my life, my mother's life, and everything I hold dearly, this dog had the face of an old woman. It got closer, closer, and closer. We all saw it. It just kept looking at us. This old lady's face was on the dog's body. I can't describe it any other way. We got out of Dodge real quick. We started hearing the drumming again, and that was it. We made it home, and we were shaken up like crazy. That mountain's home to things we don't know about. I've heard laughter that was mixed with a horse. I've heard women screaming and have felt the ground shake from rumbling. It was insane. I don't go out there as often as I used to, but I've never gone hunting there again. Last weekend, I decided to drive up to this nice area that I've visited before in northern Catalonia. I did some hiking, and to avoid paying for a campground, I decided to drive up the mountain, about 15 minutes up from the nearest town, to a calm pasture on top of the mountain which I've visited before. It was only 9 p.m. I was clear-minded and still quite awake, but I tilted my driver's seat back and closed my eyes. Within about a minute, something big hits and rocks my car, coming from the rear right side, opposite me. I think, okay, I just imagined that, and closed my eyes again. About a minute later, the same exact thing. Boom! And the car rocks from side to side. Now I'm freaked. I know there are lots of big cows up there, so I thought it must have been a cow. Could be a person, but the force was large. Despite that, it's a quite remote place in the Pre-Pyrenees where nobody goes at night. So I get out to investigate, flashlight in hand. I walk all around the car, shining the light into the distance. Nothing. This was in a pasture where I could see for about 100 to 150 meters in every direction. So there's no way something could have hit the car and then run and hidden. I get back in the car to think about what to do. Within about 5 seconds, another hit, and the car rocks. That's 3. Having known there was no one or nothing around, the only option left was that it was some sort of a spirit. I get out and, after looking around the car again, speak out saying, "Look, I just want to sleep here for the night, then I'll be gone. Please, just let me sleep here." I get back in the car and, within 5 to 10 seconds, again, a 4th big hit, and the car rocks from side to side. I knew it was time to leave, so I back the car up, turn around, and start taking off back down the mountain. I immediately felt the thing was in the car with me, making sure I left. I even turned my head around to look in the back, absolutely sure I'd see something. I rolled down the windows and yelled, "Please, just go! Let me be, I'm leaving, all right?" After about 3 minutes of driving, I felt like it had left. I get down the mountain to the town, park my car, and call a close friend. We spoke for an hour and a half until she could calm me down. She had chills going down her spine as she knows me well and knows that what I explained was real. My life changed forever that night, and I haven't been back to the mountains since. A very strange experience happened to me and my girlfriend just 40 minutes ago. I work as a manager at Seven Falls, which is right at the foothills of the Rockies and near the city. Normally, when I work nights, I meet my girlfriend at the picnic sites, right outside the canyon, where there are a lot of flat open spaces, a creek, and lots of deer. We hang out there and talk and sometimes other stuff. Anyway, I met her there as usual. She got there before me, and she was out of her car doing something in the back seat when I pulled up. I got out and talked to her, and the first thing she said was that there were noises in the bushes right across the road. I just figured it was a deer on the deer path which runs alongside the road, since we hear deer there all the time when we hang out. I kept hearing the breaking of sticks and rustling of leaves on the other side of the road, so I decided to quietly walk over there to see if there were any deer. My girlfriend didn't want me to go, so she stayed on the other side of the road. It was dark and the only light I had on me was on my cell phone. So as I approached, I shined my light into the dense vegetation where the noise had come from. Suddenly, a little rock was thrown behind me. I turned back and saw my girlfriend walking back to the car and assumed she had thrown it out of spite for me leaving. Then I heard rustling further up ahead, so I continued walking to the area and it went silent. I figured maybe there were 2 deer. They normally move in small herds, so I didn't think anything of it. I turned around and started to head back to the car when another little rock was thrown at me, this time in front of me from whatever was moving in the forest. I knew it couldn't have been my girlfriend as she was in the car waiting and I could plainly see it. So then I started getting interested as to what could possibly be throwing rocks at me if it wasn't my girlfriend. I mean, clearly, it couldn't have been a deer. Granted, trying to stay objective and critical, I went back and confirmed that she hadn't thrown a rock. This only made her more uneasy, and she accused me of trying to scare her. We talked for a little bit, but I kept hearing the noises coming from the trees to the point that I wanted to investigate further. My girlfriend didn't believe me about the rock throwing, so I eventually convinced her to come with me, and we followed the deer trail to where the sound had been coming from, with our cell phone lights on. We didn't find anything and decided to turn back. We hadn't been at the car for more than 20 seconds when suddenly we heard loud crashing sounds. They seemed to be emanating from exactly where we had been in the woods. They started getting closer and closer to the road and to where we were. Sticks and stones were being thrown, and the large brush trees were shaking violently, only meters from the tree line. My girlfriend got scared, and so did I. I quickly escorted her to her car, and then I went to mine and followed her out. We left in a hurry, and I met her at a gas station nearby, where we confirmed that we both had heard and saw the same thing. The following day, I dragged her with me to check out the site in the daytime. We brought a tape measurement, a camera, and whatever else we needed for documenting. We found footprints in the heavy leaves and undergrowth on the ground. I tried to replicate them by stomping and jumping on the ground to mimic what it would take to make a mark. I even tried on the slanted downhill part of the terrain, with no avail. I couldn't make a dent in the undergrowth, and the steps aligned with what we had heard and seen the night before. There were even freshly broken tree branches at about 4.5 feet that went right in the direction of the footprints. Ironically, I was confused at first because I thought the branch was too low for a large bipedal creature and thought maybe it was a bear. It wasn't until I touched the branch that I realized it had already been broken and was only holding on by a section of bark. This confirmed that whatever had been out there was a very heavy creature indeed.